When you picture an oil rig, you're probably looking straight up at that towering derrick. But in this explainer, we're keeping our eyes a lot closer to the ground. Because the real bottleneck of this whole operation isn't necessarily what's happening deep in the hole. It's how we actually feed the beast at the surface. It's a massive logistical puzzle of moving thousands of pounds of steel, and it all starts right here.
Let's kick things off with a number, 600. Specifically, 600 pounds. 5-inch drill pipe runs about 19.5 pounds per foot nominal. That means a single 31-foot joint weighs in around 600 pounds, and that's before you even slap on the tool joints. You're basically moving something that weighs as much as a large motorcycle, and it's over 30 feet long. Now pair that immense weight with this next number, 300. On a typical trip, you're dealing with 300 of these joints. Every single one needs to travel from the storage racks at ground level, up into the derrick, down into the hole, and then eventually they have to come all the way back out again.
Which brings us to part 1, the heavy lifting problem.
If you do the math on that, we're talking about roughly 180,000 pounds of steel moving in a single trip. That is a staggering amount of weight. You absolutely cannot just wing this workflow. You need a dedicated highway. And that highway is called the Catwalk. It's a long, elevated staging ramp at the side of the rig, sitting right between your horizontal pipe racks and the V-door. It's basically a staging area and a transport route rolled into one absolutely crucial piece of equipment.
Let's trace the exact route every single joint takes. It starts in horizontal storage on the pipe racks. Then it rolls onto the catwalk, gets pulled up the V-door ramp, and finally arrives vertically onto the rig floor where it's connected to the drill string. It is a continuous, relentless cycle.
Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of the Highway.
Now, every inch of this physical structure is cleverly designed to support that massive flow we just talked about. But test yourself for a second here. Why raise the catwalk on a structure at all? Why not just lay it flat and drag the pipe along the dirt right to the base of the V-door? Pause and think about it. What does that elevation actually buy you out there?
Well, here's the answer. By elevating the catwalk, you significantly flatten the angle of the climb up to the rig floor. The shallower you make that climb, the less the pipe has to be lifted vertically. That drastically cuts down the chance of a heavy load swinging out of control or sliding backward on you. Plus, raising it up keeps the pipe and your crews completely out of the mud. You get a clean, level, and well-drained working surface, which is pretty much non-negotiable when you're throwing around weight like this. And sure, on modern rigs, a powered pipe handling machine does the actual lifting, but the fundamental geometry and the physics, they remain exactly the same.
This brings us to Section 3, the 90-degree flip. This is the core mechanical paradox that the catwalk solves every single day. Think about it. Pipe has to be stacked and trucked horizontally, right? That is literally the only practical way to transport and store thousands of feet of steel. But it's used vertically in the hole. So somewhere between the dirt and the rig floor, every single joint has to undergo a massive change of orientation. And that brilliantly illustrates what the catwalk actually does. It's the stage where this 600-pound, car-sized flip is controlled, one joint at a time. It takes a horizontal object, controls its movement, and safely manages that transition into a vertical position without letting gravity take the wheel. It's really just a highly predictable, repeatable, mechanical ballet.
Section 4, Managing Two-Way Traffic.
It's vital to remember that this highway is definitely not a one-way street. Traffic flows heavily in both directions, and it handles way more than just standard drill pipe. Pipe goes in on the way down, and it has to come back out on the way back. But it's also running alongside casing, heavy drill collars, massive bottom hole assembly components, tubing during a workover, and basically anything long and heavy that needs to get from the ground into the derrick. All of it rides the catwalk. And because absolutely everything travels this exact same path, that entire corridor from the catwalk up through the V-door to well center is treated as a highly dangerous line of fire whenever anything is moving. You definitely do not want to be standing anywhere in this corridor when a massive piece of steel is in motion.
Which naturally leads us into Section 5, 3 classic pipe hazards.
Handling that much weight mechanically brings us straight to safety, because let's face it, nothing on the catwalk is a two-man lift. There are 3 classic rig floor injuries, and interestingly, they're almost all about pipe handling, not the machinery itself. First, you've got rolling pipe. A round object on a slight slope needs exactly one accidental push to become totally uncontrollable. That's why racks have stops and pipe is strictly chalked. Second, pinch points. Getting hands caught between two joints or between the pipe and the rail is actually the most common serious hand injury on any rig site. And third, uncontrolled swinging ends. When you lift a 30-foot joint from one end, the other end sweeps a huge, fast arc right at knee height.
So, to survive and actually work efficiently in this environment, you've got to follow the most grounding rule of thumb on the rig. Stand at the side of the pipe, never at the end. If you are at the side, you are out of the line of fire. It's an incredibly simple rule, but it saves careers and it saves lives.
Finally, let's hit Section 6, sequencing the entire rig. Let's wrap things up with what I consider the biggest secret of the Catwalk, and its true operational impact on the entire drilling process. Honestly, it operates exactly like an airport baggage belt. Think about it. Bags arrive at the airport in this chaotic, disorganized pile, but the belt sequences them into a single, controlled stream, delivering them one at a time in the exact right order. That is the Catwalk's real job. It doesn't just move pipe. It perfectly sequences it for the derrick.
Because of this sequencing, the Catwalk is basically the rig's metronome. If the pipe doesn't arrive at the V-door exactly on time, the drill floor has to stop and wait. This means that trip speed on a multi-million-dollar rig is very often limited by how well the pipe is handled on the ground. Ground handling is the true bottleneck of the whole operation. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. If the speed and efficiency of your entire massive drilling rig are ultimately set by a metal ramp sitting on the dirt, are you really paying enough attention to it? It's so easy to look up at the high-tech top drives in those massive blocks, but the battle for efficiency is very often won or lost right there on the Catwalk. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.